Gia Ditch, and welcome back to Craic on the Coast. I'm Michael Schilling here on the South Shore of Massachusetts, where we bring you the stories, music, and heritage of the Irish both at home and abroad. Today I'm joined by two very special guests, Liam Ó Culbáird of the National Graves Association in Dublin and George McLaughlin of the Fenian Memorial Committee of America. Together, their organizations are leading an important project that will give Fenian Denis Cashman the recognition he has so long deserved. And on Saturday, September 13th at Holyhood Cemetery in Brookline, they're going to unveil a headstone on his grave. And from that, I would introduce our guests, Liam and George. Welcome to Craic on the Coast.
Hi, Michael. Thanks very much.
No problem. Now, before we get into details of your organizations and everything else, for our listeners, let's set the stage a little bit. For the event coming up, Denis Cashman, a Fenian, arrested, imprisoned, exiled for his fight for freedom. But the story goes well beyond that, right, Liam? I mean, there's a lot more to his story other than just being sent to Australia.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, just before I start, Michael, I just want to congratulate yourself and Sean on the podcast. I think it's a fantastic public service. I was able to go in and listen to a couple of previous episodes. So
thank you.
Well done on that.
Thank you.
Michael, yes, Denis Cashman. Denis Cashman was he was an Irish Fenian. He wasn't one of the big leading headliner names within the movement or anything, but he was still very important. As you mentioned there, he was born. He's from Waterford, West Waterford. He was born in 1843, so he would have grown up through on Gurta Moor, the Irish famine. We all know famine is a misnomer, of course, because there was food in the country.
Correct.
But he would have grown up through that period, and that would have shaped his outlook on life and given him that desire for independence from the British Empire. So he joined the Fenians when he was 16, and he rose through the ranks. And in the lead up to the Fenian Rising in Ireland in 1867, he was arrested. Informers work done again. Denis got arrested, and he was sentenced to 7 years for felony treason. And they sent him first to a jail in England, Millbank, and then they transported him to Fremantle in Western Australia. So he served out his time in Fremantle, and then when he was released, he made his way to the United States, and he ended up in Boston. He was quite pally. He was a good friend of John Boyle O'Reilly. And when he reached Boston, he settled. He was reunited with his wife and children, and settled down. And he was involved with the newspaper, the Boston Pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to he worked as a civil servant with the wastewater department at a later stage. An important thing is that he kept his interest in Ireland. He kept the desire for Irish freedom stayed with him right throughout his days. And later he wrote a biography of the famous Land League leader Michael Davitt. So that's kind of a rough kind of outline of the life of Denis Cashman.
Sure. And George, I mean, I was just going to say, and George, from someone who you're based out of Worcester, we're based out of Weymouth. A lot of our listeners are in the New England area and are going to be familiar with the name John Boyle O'Reilly. That's a big deal for us Hibernians because every year we get together and we go to Holyhood Cemetery and we have a memorial for John Boyle O'Reilly. And maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, I'm actually in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
But I belong to Worcester. So because they're a lively gang, and they're committed to things like the history of Irish resistance to British rule. So we can't, regretfully, we can't say that for every division of the AOH. We should be able to say that, but most of them are, and Worcester is very much so, and has always had an open heart when it comes to this, and sometimes an open pocketbook.
Right.
So they have helped the Fenian Memorial Committee of America a number of times with adverts and with donations. So I think I'm stuck with them for the rest of my days because they welcomed me when I transferred, which isn't always an easy thing, as a Hibernian, and it can be a little cumbersome. And I'm more than willing to travel from Rhode Island up to Worcester to help them and to attend meetings. So I should say that as a backdrop with Worcester. So Cashman is like, it's important to say, I think, that the Fenians were, I suppose, quote unquote, invented on both sides of the sea. And this is why, as Irish Americans, we should be really tied to their story. And the reason that happened was, the Fenian Brotherhood on our side and the Irish Republican Brotherhood on the other side of the pond, as we call it sometimes, is because of so many of the Irish revolutionaries, even before the Fenians existed, who fled to America. And they fled to America because they were met with open arms. There was a huge Irish population, as there is now, but first generation at that time, of course. And there were many, as I said, there were many revolutionaries who had come before them, who came here, and they would have been, many of them would have been executed or definitely imprisoned. And they came here because of the promise of the American Revolution, really, which to a large degree was fought by people who were Irish under Washington. So all of that kind of ties together in a big ball. And I think Cashman was one of the people who is an example of, there's a quote in the Bible in the New Testament where Christ is addressed by an apostle, and the apostle turns to him and says, but to who do we go, Lord? And the answer for that with the Fenians was, you go to America.
Mm.
And that's where they went. That's where they went. And there were scores of them. And some of them much more, as Liam said, some of them much more notorious or famous than others. But and many of them were very well spoken and well written in many cases. And Cashman was an example of that. So it's 128 years since his grave was opened and he was put into it.
Now,
but
according to the information on the event at Holyhood Cemetery, it doesn't sound like his grave is all that far from John Boyle O'Reilly's. Is that correct?
No, it is not. It is not. No. Yeah, when we went there, people from the NGA and myself to explore it, which is always the big part of this process, and usually very often leads to frustration, as Liam knows, because you can't find the grave, it's not marked, or it's especially if there's no stone at all, or even plaque. And sometimes the records aren't good, and the dates are wrong, and there's all kinds of frustrating elements to it, of course. But when you find it and it's there, there's always a mixture, at least in my case, of exhilaration and great sadness.
Mm.
Because in many, many ways, and I'll speak for my Irish cousin here as well, wherever the Fenians were buried, wherever anybody who resisted British rule was buried, in its own way, is a sacred place. So for there not to be any marker for many of these men, and in some cases women, that sadness wells up in you that this was never done.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're paying for the sins, I always feel like, of our ancestors on both sides of the ocean, the Irish and the Irish Americans, for whatever reason. Sometimes there were good reasons, don't get me wrong, but in many cases it was just neglect or sometimes infighting, I'm sorry to say. And so this is unfinished business, and thanks to the National Graves Association, who have been doing this a lot longer than the Fenian Memorial Committee. We're going to take care of the Fenian Denis Cashman.
His grave was unmarked for so long. It's fantastic now that a proper fitting memorial will be erected, and on behalf of the National Graves Association, we are delighted to be working with the Fenian Memorial Committee of America, and George and his crew have been so helpful in it's just the logistics of arranging things on the ground. Because we are based in Ireland, it's quite difficult to get things done and to be satisfied that they are done. But we've teamed up with George and the Fenian Memorial Committee, and George is doing Trojan work on the ground there. He's set up everything for this occasion on Saturday the 13th. And again, George, I just want to pass on my appreciation on behalf of the National Graves Association.
That's great.
Margaret, yeah.
Gotcha.
So let's.
Yeah, that goes both ways, of course. But and one of the reasons have been excited about this project is that it gives us a chance to highlight what can be done in two entities that are so far away from each other, so that hopefully small efforts like this, I say put small in quotation marks, as Liam knows, because of all the work that he's done, small efforts like this might lead to a bit of inspiration for us to do more things like this. Because Irish America is a big part of this story. It's a big part of this story. And, we're the only ones specifically mentioned in the 1916 proclamation.
Right.
We're cousins that I lightly referred to earlier. We're the cousins. And the dramatic, historic reasons for that. And we need to remember it more. And one way to remember it is to remember these men who are buried here.
Yeah, definitely. And collaboration is important. I mean, in our division here in Plymouth, collaboration is key on a lot of the events or memorials that we do. If we didn't have partnerships and collaborations with other Irish organizations, then we wouldn't be able to put on the size of the events we do. So that's really important. Now, zooming out a little bit, just to educate the listeners and everything else, we'll start with Liam. Could you give us a little bit of a background and history on the National Graves Association?
Sure. So I am involved with the National Graves Association for about 18 years now. And what got me involved was that I used to be going around graveyards in Ireland. I used to be dragged around by my parents, oh, Dad, not another graveyard.
Like most kids are.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah. And at the time, of course, I had no interest in it really, but it obviously something was ingrained. And but I kept seeing the name National Graves Association on all these grave headstones. around the country, and I was always curious as to who were the National Graves Association. So then when I got older, I got involved. So the National Graves Association were founded in 1926. It was 10 years after the Easter Rising. But we can trace our lineage back further than that, because we had a number of old Fenians who were involved in. There was a previous organization called the Fenian Memorial Committee, and there was old Fenians like O'Byrne and James Stritch, and they were there at the founding of the National Graves Association, as well as the wife of the famous Fenian, Tom Clark, also executed in 1916. Kathleen Clark was involved in our founding as well. And what we do is essentially we maintain and erect graves and monuments in memory of those that have fought and died in the cause of Irish freedom. And we commemorate Irish patriots from all generations. And the best thing about the National Graves Association, and the thing that attracted me to the NGA, is that they're not aligned to any particular political party or group, or that we maintain our independence, and we're quite protective of that. We think that it's quite important, because there's lots of political parties that kind of try to claim ownership of
Sure.
of Irish martyrs down through the years. So that's really what attracted me to the National Graves Association. So there's always stuff on the go. There's always projects to be done. So in 2026, we're getting ready for our 100th anniversary. So that's going to be quite a busy year. So we have a number of projects lined up. So actually, this Sunday, yeah, today is the 5th, on the 7th of September. Yeah, we're unveiling a headstone on the grave of Sean O'Connell. Sean O'Connell was in 1977. He died in Parkhurst Jail in England, the Isle of Wight in England. He was an IRA man who he got a life sentence, but he developed cancer while he was in jail, but he was denied proper medical attention at the right time, and it got worse, and he died in Parkhurst Jail. So we're unveiling a headstone to him this weekend. We have an ongoing campaign to release the Invincibles. Again, the Invincibles linked to the Fenians. The Invincibles were, I suppose, an assassination squad set up. There were Fenians, and they were set up, this group, as an assassination squad, and they assassinated two of the very top-ranking British civil servants who were in Ireland at the time. They're talking about 1882, and following the assassination, there was a trial, and 5 of the men were sentenced to death. 5 of the Invincibles were sentenced to death. They were hung and they were buried in Kilmainham Jail. So we have a campaign on at the moment to get the government to agree to the release of the men's bodies. The men's bodies are still buried in Kilmainham Jail.
Oh, wow.
So we would like to. I mean, that's a sentence on top of a sentence, really. So we're campaigning to get the Invincibles released from Kilmainham Jail, and we've made available plots for them in Glasnevin Cemetery, which would be a much more appropriate burial place for men who paid the ultimate price for Irish freedom.
Sure. Now, with regards to, I know you've said that you're non-political, which I think is great. That gives you an autonomy to deal with whoever is the majority in power in government at the time. But how is the cooperation with regards to the government when you're making requests like that?
It's not
was
great
that a
because
loaded question?
He was
there you go.
waiting
Yeah,
for that one.
yeah. It's always a bone of contention. There's that reluctance there to engage with history, which is unfortunate. Yeah, but
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
it's the ethos that's there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I
amazing to
wouldn't say
me
it's
that,
the same thing here. It's the same thing here. Excuse
yeah,
me for interjecting, but it's the same thing here. It's very difficult to get people um, to move on these things in many cases if they don't benefit from it. As politicians, that's been my experience anyway.
They're
So
happy with the status quo.
sure.
yes, and there are notable exceptions. But we don't, for instance, we won't allow here in America, we won't allow politicians from representing parties or positions or any to speak at any of our things. They can attend and they can mention, but they're not going to be noted speakers in it because I think you go down a very tricky road in those things, and that sometimes makes the work a lot more difficult as a result of trying to stick to that. But that aura of independence that the NGA has is something that I deeply admire because I think in the long run it gives you, of course, more integrity and more freedom to do what you believe is right, and in terms of sticking to the original foundation of the organization,
Yeah. And
Thanks, George.
I've always been very, even when I was first became a Hibernian, that was one of the things that I was really drawn to, in that, even at conventions, whoever the national president has been, whether or not there's a comment about who is officially the current president or in office or not, it's our organization has to interact and has to work with them because we're not politically aligned. Our alignments are with our mission, and that's what's most important. So I definitely can have respect for the NGA being the same way.
Definitely.
I mean,
Thanks, Michael.
it's amazing. You're talking about you're hitting 100th anniversary, and it sounds like there's still a lot to do with regards to what your organization's mission is. Now, obviously your talk about, in England, where there's an event in the States next weekend. How far out from Ireland have you guys had an event where you've, remembered or unveiled a headstone?
The USA is the farthest, and that's because of the interest that the Irish American diaspora have in their history, and they're interested in, proud of where they're come from and their heritage. They take great pride in their heritage, and that gives us that's really impressive to us. That it could be 100 years later, but people are still interested in where they came from. It's inspirational.
Well,
I would also say with the Fenian Memorial Committee of America, which was only 20 years old, but only, it feels like 200 sometimes, but it's only 20 years old. We're innately tied to the story of the Catalpa rescue, so that's how all of this began here.
Sure.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm Brooklyn Irish, so if I say things that are off color every once in a while, you can blame it on that. But I read The Life of Wolfe Tone a number of years ago, one of them. And one of the things I was struck by, as I am by really famous people, I'm not comparing myself to him, of course, the father of modern republicanism, but one of the things I was struck by was how many things he kind of fell into. It almost seemed destiny, because he was transformed. I always say your best friend, you remember how you met your best friend, and you go back and they say, the man was in the car park and he dropped his groceries. Now that I think of it, it wasn't some profound experience.
Sure.
I think in many cases that's what happened with Wolf Tone, and then he kept seeing the light through the tunnel, and he kept following it, and he was radicalized and transformed. His view that England had no right to rule in Ireland, and that whatever means were necessary should be taken to resist them and to expel them. So, in a way, that's what happened with the Fenian Memorial Committee in a minuscule way, in terms of comparison, because somebody rang me from Philadelphia who was in the modern form of the Clan de Gael, and Dorothy Robinson was her name, and she rang me. And she had a conversation with me. She said, "By the way, there's a Fenian buried up there." This was shortly after I moved to Rhode Island. And I said, "Oh, really? Where?" And she said, "Oh, ta-da." And I said, "Go away." And she said, "Yeah." And it was literally a mile from my house, and I had no idea. Well, then, what happened? What do they say? Knowledge is responsibility. Okay. Well, eventually I kept thinking about them, and then I saw a photograph of a man tending a grave in a journal. Those journals that come out, they're pictorial journals of towns throughout the United States, and this one was on Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Oh wow, Pawtucket. Okay.
This man was tending the grave, and I looked closely at the photograph, and that was the Fenian.
Huh.
Okay, the light at the tunnel.
Yep.
Here it comes. It's getting bigger and wider. So, well, eventually it turned out that man was James McNally Wilson, who was one of the 6 people who were rescued on the Catalpa vessel that sailed from New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Right.
And to rescue them. And he did escape, and he, through a network of people, arrived eventually in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. He lived out his days there. So I formed a committee thinking, oh, we'll take care of James McNally Wilson, and that'll be the end of it. It's wonderful that we're doing this. We met in the local library. I was a teacher in a little town called Central Falls, very impoverished town. And I formed a committee which included students from all around the world, actually, from Spain and Colombia and Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And so on. And they became members of the committee along with a number of Irish American, local Irish American. So that blossomed, and we put in a plaque for him in his grave, which just said Patriot on the stone. So we put a descriptive bronze plaque at his grave in that cemetery. And of course, that led to, as it always does, as Liam knows, it's like I always say, oh, you fixed the fence in the back garden, right?
One thing leads to another.
Oh, yeah.
And you see next to the fence, there's something wrong, because compared to that fence, everything looks bad. So that's what happened. We went, and then eventually it led to us taking care of discovering first, sadly, that many of them didn't have gravestones. The men who were rescued, who were in all these different states, and we took care of them, and we took care of Father Patrick McCabe, who was a heroic priest in Western Australia, and his area, his quote-unquote parish, included Fremantle Prison. And he helped them to escape by bringing in and out comms or communications, letters to them. And that's how the stage was set. He even allowed John Boyle O'Reilly to take his priestly garb and wear it at one point for his separate escape from those 6 men. So all of that just kind of built, and then we just keep moving on now to other figures, including two Invincibles who were buried next to John McNally Wilson in Pawtucket. So a man and a wife, Frank and Mary Byrne, so who fled here. So we have a really deep history in America of this connection to the Fenians and to Irish revolutionaries.
Oh, definitely.
George,
Yeah, it's a deep, deep connection. I don't think, sadly, I don't think a lot of Irish Americans have a clue how deep it is. And it is we have to try to revive that. And one way of doing that is paying tribute to these men and women,
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, George, you mentioned the Catalpa rescue, which was a huge event at the time, but it's linked to Denis Cashman because
right.
Denis Cashman he had been in prison. He had been in Fremantle, and along with John Boyle O'Reilly. And when they were released, John Boyle O'Reilly escaped. He wasn't permitted to be released, but he got out.
Right.
And then Denis was eventually released after serving his time. But they knew the run of Fremantle, and in the late mid 1870s, there was still a number of Fenian prisoners kept there, and John Devoy in New York and a couple of the leaders of Clan na Gael came to Boston, and they sat down with John Boyle O'Reilly and Denis Cashman, and they worked out the plans for the Catalpa rescue. So that's particularly relevant to Denis Cashman, who we will be commemorating next week.
Yeah, no, and it's amazing that, to what you're saying, George, about uncovering history and making it well known, because even as Hibernians in this area, we know the story of John Boyle O'Reilly really well. He's part of our annual commemorations that the State Board of Massachusetts holds every year. But now getting to uncover the story and hear the story of Denis Cashman and his inclusion in the Catalpa story and being in Boston. And I think that's great that we're, like you said, that uncovering that history and celebrating that history and remembering those that might not be as easily, names don't roll off the tongue like John Boyle O'Reilly does, and having giving Denis Cashman that recognition it's a great mission on both. Now,
and Cashman, by the way, Cashman is in that graveyard, Holyhood, because he wanted to be buried close to his old comrade. That's the reason he's there.
Yeah.
So, a lot of these things are little touching anecdotes, but they're really important. I mean, they were both on the Hougoumont, and the last prison ship to sail from Ireland, and and that's where Cashman had the famous diary and everything, along with John Boyle O'Reilly and a man named Flood. But the whole idea of honor and avoiding betrayal and commitment to an Irish Republic drove all these people. It drove them. It was almost as though, the way I view it anyway, and it's not confined to the Irish, of course, but that they were driven. They were driven. And part of what drove them was the camaraderie that they had together.
Sure.
And that's the reason he's there. So when we went to see the grave the first time, Aidan Lambert, who's from the NGA, and his wife and myself, stumbling around in this graveyard for it seemed like forever. It was touching when I realized how close his grave was to John Boyle O'Reilly's beautiful grave. And yeah,
Michael, do you mind if I just tell how we got involved in this project.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's why we're here. I'm and myself, along with our listeners, if they're tuning into this, it's because they want to hear the story behind how this event it basically came about. So definitely.
So we know that Cashman's grave was unmarked for a long time, and these things happen through time. Now the National Graves Association were approached by Cashman was from Dungarvan in West Waterford. We were approached by two people from Dungarvan, Nicholas O'Griffin and Eddie Cantwell, who were involved in local history down there. And they brought the case of Cashman to our attention. And Nicholas and Eddie had they went to Boston and searching for the grave. So it was Nicholas and Eddie that kind of started off the initial work and the research, and they made initial contact with Denis Cashman's family, and they were working alongside Aidan Lambert. George mentioned Aidan there. Aidan is the lead on this project for the National Graves Association. He's done it's unbelievable the amount of work that these projects take, where you're ringing around people and then you have to check all the history and you have to verify that all the facts are correct. There's an awful lot involved in it, so we are very indebted to Aidan Lambert for all the work that he has put into this project. And now it's coming to fruition, and next Saturday, the 13th, it'll come to pass. Yeah, it's great.
That's great. Now, with regards to there's just an interesting question on my part. You talk about how the story of Denis Cashman was brought to you. When you guys target a project, is that due to historians coming to you, or do you get possibly family members, 4 generations removed, coming to you and say, look, we have this family member, we know they were involved in whether it's the IRB or another organization and fought for freedom, we'd like for them to get recognition? Or is it more often than not a historian comes to you and say, we know this person exists, we just need to find them?
It's hard to say. It'd be kind of 50-50 really, Michael. I mean, if anybody does have information on, somebody that they think merits the attention of the National Graves Association, more than welcome to make contact with us. We're limited in our resources, but we do endeavour to make sure that every Irish patriot that contributed to the cause is recognised for their part that they played,
and which would be obvious. I mean, I would think, just so that you guys aren't hit with a litany of requests, that you have to be able to back that up with documentation of the involvement. It can't just be based on word of mouth. Obviously, you guys you'd never have enough resources to be running around as much as you would then.
Exactly. It is limited what we can do. So, as I was saying earlier, we're approaching quite a busy year now. Next year, where we have the campaign for the Invincibles is ongoing. The release of the Invincibles from Kilmainham Jail. So we're hoping to make some progress on that. We're also going to be we just this week we received permission to erect a plaque at Dundalk Jail during the Irish Civil War. It was July 1922. There was over 100 IRA prisoners were captured by the Free Staters, and they were being held in Dundalk Jail. And late one night, some gelignite was placed, and a nice little hole was made in the wall, and 106 IRA prisoners escaped out through the hole. So the prison was an old Victorian prison, an old Victorian wall. When you go, if you were to walk down the street, most people don't notice it, but if it's pointed out to you, you can see the exact spot where the hole was made.
Oh, wow.
So we've just been given permission to put up a plaque saying that to the effect of, on such and such a date in 1922, 106 IRA prisoners escaped from Dundalk jail through a hole blown by their comrades on the outside.
See, I think
that's an
those.
exciting one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think locations are just as important. I remember I was over in May in Dublin and was with a friend of mine who's very well versed in the history behind 1916. And as much as there is the GPO and Kilmainham, you can walk and you can see the plaques of where they made their last stand before the surrender. And it's locations are just as important as the individuals, I think. So that's great that you're putting a plaque
Absolutely.
up for that. So what's going on? What's next for the Memorial Committee, George?
Well, after this, this is also the 100th anniversary next year of the end of one of the few absolute successes in our resistance throughout the last few hundred years. So, so the Catalpa sailed. It ended in 1876, basically. So.
150th.
150th, I'm sorry, 150th anniversary. So it started in they sailed in 1867. Anyway, it's 100 years, but I'm confusing two different events. But anyway, so it is a big anniversary, and it's coming up, and it's for the Catalpa rescue. And what we're trying to do is to work with the National Graves Association and put plaques, if possible, in someplace in Ireland to commemorate all the men who escaped and all the people who helped them escape, including all of the unknown ones, which is a whole other subject about the nature of the Fenian Brotherhood, since it was a quote-unquote secret society.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of people who helped, gave their lives, gave their work, gave their well-being, whose names we will never know. So that will be part of the plaques. And the reason for doing this, if it can be done, hopefully next year, is not just the importance of the dates, but it's that because there's no national monument in Ireland to the Catalpa rescue. So there's a small one, which Liam actually found to two of the men, or a man named Harrington in County Cork was one of the people who escaped, who we put a tombstone in for, actually, in New York. But there's no national monument, which is a shame. It is in the National Museum. There are artifacts. And what happens with those things in museums? They get brought out every few years and shown to people, and they have an exhibit, and then they go back into the archives. So there should be something, especially, I think, not just for Irish-born people, but the people in the Irish diaspora from Australia, which is a big part of the story as well.
Sure,
There's a great in Australia to honoring these men. And there's and in Irish America. So when Irish Americans visit and they go to places in Ireland, and they can see some evidence of what happened in the Catalpa rescue and how successful it was, and to a large degree because of the Irish in America. So it's part of who we are. So that's hopefully will be our next project. And after that, there's a woman named Catherine Hughes, who does not have a tombstone, who's buried in St. Raymond's Cemetery in the Bronx in New York. And she died penniless she gave up everything to support Irish resistance. She died in 1926, and it's a sad story. She was an Irish Canadian. She came from Prince Edward Island, and so she's another one that we discovered through a supporter in Ottawa, in Canada, who's from County Westmeath, and so those would be the next two. I try. I'm sure Liam will identify with this. I try not to look too far ahead in these matters because it's like paying your bills, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So like, I'm taking care of the gas bill. That's it. Okay. You look at all the bills. You don't do anything.
Right. You just get frozen in place.
Yeah. So I don't know how long the Fenian Memorial Committee will survive. We only survive because of goodwill and our benefactors.
I was just going to bring that up. I mean, for anyone, you guys both are talking about what you can do based on the resources you have. Obviously, that's always the limiting factor. For anyone who's listening or has the ability to go to the event on the 13th, and if they're so moved, is there what are the options people have to try to support, whether it's the National Graves Association or the Fenian Monument Committee, so that you guys have the resources that you need to be able to do what you're doing, which is an important mission?
Yeah, the National Graves Association, we don't receive any government funding, nor do we apply for it. So we depend on the goodwill of people that have an interest in these things. So if anybody does want to contribute, help with offset some of these costs, our website is www.nga.ie, National Graves Association.ie, nga.ie, and you can donate there, or you can take out an associate membership. But if people would like to keep up to date on what we're doing and our activities, we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page. We welcome contact from the public with stories or news that might be of interest. What about you, George? Do you want to give out your details there?
Yeah, we're our website is www.fenianmca.org, fenianmca.org, and we're also on Facebook under Fenian Memorial Committee of America, and there's a way for people to donate there electronically, and there's also an address if you want to donate via check. With us, we always seem to need money, and as they say in Brookline, beggars can't be choosers. So you got to take it from wherever it comes.
Oh yeah, I'm also a firm believer that, and we've experienced this at our AOH division, is that when you give people the avenue to donate and make a difference, more often than not only are you happy with the response, but you're kind of overwhelmed by it, especially, I mean, the next question, to close out, I would ask this question of both of you is for anyone who listens to this podcast or see the posts that have been on social media about the event, what do you hope people will feel and will get out of coming on the 13th and experiencing this unveiling?
Well, I think that anybody that has an interest in the subject of Irish freedom and the Fenians will get a great sense of satisfaction that this man he made such a huge contribution to the struggle for Irish freedom. He gave up his freedom. He was separated from his family. He went through huge hardship in Australia and on the prison ship, the Huguenot. We think that these guys, the Fenians, are often kind of they're kind of given a secondary place in Irish history, but the Fenians were really, really important because the Fenians kept alive the desire for Irish independence between, we had obviously the 1798 rebellion was followed by Robert Emmet's rebellion in 1803, and then it was quiet then for a while until the 50th anniversary of the 1798 rebellion was 1848, which was the Young Irelanders rebellion. And again, that awoken the sense of the desire for freedom. Following that, the Fenian rebellion, 1867, it was the Fenians again, and the 1880s we had the Invincibles and the Land War. Again, the Fenians, they kept the flame alive. They didn't have any huge military successes, but we're still here in 2025 and we're still talking about them, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's credit to the influence that they have had. There's no doubt the 1916 Proclamation of Independence it's directly based on the Fenian proclamation that they had produced in 1867. They had such a huge influence. So I hope that people will come out to the event in Brookline on the 13th at 12 noon and will participate. We'll have it's a busy program for the event, George, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We have a number of descendants of Cashman coming, which is not always the case. Sometimes they're very difficult to find.
Sure, yeah.
So, so there are a number of them attending, which would be very nice, and they will they will participate, including laying the wreath at the grave. And
that'd be powerful.
Yeah, it'd be powerful, and that has, in terms of the Fenian Memorial Committee, that has happened before, but not always. Sometimes we can't find people here; they're too difficult to contact. We actually had people, in the case of Martin Hogan, who was one of the men who escaped on the Catalpa. We found one of our supporters found. Two of his descendants, direct line grandchildren, and they knew his name and they knew some basic facts about him, but they never knew that he was a Fenian or that he escaped on the Catalpa. And they came to it, and it was very moving for them, of course.
Sure.
But I think for people who are not directly connected, what this does is, it does for me anyway, is that, and I've seen it in others, that it is transformative because it helps us, and though this sounds elliptical, but it helps us to remember those whom we never knew. So we're remembering the idea of people, in this case, who had tremendous courage and commitment, and that's part of our heritage.
It's
in
a big
Ireland
part.
And America, that's part of our heritage.
It's a really big
in a
part.
strange sort of a way, we're rediscovering ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're rediscovering ourselves, and these events can be quite moving in that regard. And Liam is going to be the orator at this, and we look forward to that part of it, I think. And there is a great sense, and when people attend these things, I think the people who attend, they have a great sense of satisfaction at the end that we have taken care of one of our own.
Sure.
The hairs on the back of your neck will be standing up.
That's right. That's right. And then we have a reception afterwards at the Watertown Ancient Order of Hibernians.
Correct. Yeah, I saw that in the details.
Directly afterwards with some music, and so until we end, and I've told the members of the NGA who are part of this that when we want everybody to leave, I'll get up and sing a tune.
Are you that bad a singer, George?
So, yeah, but that's the joyful part afterwards. This is the joyful part, really, and we'll celebrate this good man's life.
That's great. Well, I just want to thank both of you, Liam and George, for coming on today and giving some great background on just not only Denis Cashman's story, but just what you guys do and your mission with regards to your two organizations. It's really important. Remembering where we came from I feel like that is something, and I've said this on a couple of our episodes, especially I feel if you're, and this isn't just an Irish thing, I think this is an immigrant thing. If you're 3 or 4 generations removed, you should, a lot of those people right now, I feel, are starving for information about where they came from. And this is a direct, what you guys are doing, you're providing that, and you're making it out there, and you're putting it at the forefront, and that's really important. So for our listeners, on our show notes, we're going to leave links to both the National Graves Association and the Fenian Memorial Committee of America, so you can learn more and go on their websites and possibly donate and give them the resources they need to keep what they are doing going. Thank you so much for you, Liam, and for George for coming on. I am looking forward to next Saturday being able to meet you both in person and shake your hands, because what you're doing is really important.
Brilliant. Look forward to it, Michael. And again, thanks very much for the opportunity to come on and talk about it. And keep up the good work with the Craic on the Coast.
Thank you. I'm just trying to give people a platform to share stuff like this. Yeah. This is just great. So
important.
You're welcome. So if you're in Boston, don't miss it. Saturday, September 13th at Holyhood Cemetery in Brookline. The unveiling of Denis Cashman's headstone will happen at noon. That's going to be historic, and it's going to be moving. And for anyone in the AOH, it's just steps away from where we honor John Boyle O'Reilly each year. I also want to take this moment to do a little bit of housekeeping on our end, and that is because it kind of fits in with history and remembrance. Both of you will enjoy this. I want to take a moment to announce that this year's annual Break St. John Memorial Mass, which is going to be held on Sunday, October 5th at 2 p.m. We're going to have Monsignor Kevin O'Leary is going to be the celebrant. For anyone that's been in our events, our mainstay vocalist, Miss Maureen Haiti, will be there as well. We're going to be incorporating some Irish language into the Mass this year. But the big one is our speaking program that we usually have is going to be highlighted by a presentation from Miss Amy Elizabeth Day on her Irish folk musical In the Midst of Plenty. For anyone that's listened to previous shows, you'll know that we first learned about the show on our journey walking the National Famine Way in Ireland. We've had Amy on the podcast to talk about it. We're actually going to have students from the Berklee College of Music to come and perform several of the numbers from the production. So we're really excited about that, and it's going to be an honor to bring that story to Plymouth County and the South Shore as part of our Break St. John commemoration. So if you haven't listened to that episode, whether it's the one on the National Famine Way or the one with Amy about the show In the Midst of Plenty, be sure to go back and listen to those. You can subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. Check our show notes for all today's links and all the details. And if you've enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave a review, share it with a friend. And if you have a story you want us to talk about, or if you have something totally different, reach out by emailing us at craiconthecoast@gmail.com. That's CRAIC onthecoast@gmail.com. And Slán go fóill. We'll see you next time. Thank you.